Hello, everybody. This is Amy here, Editor-in-Chief of the Austin Common. Today we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, and specifically focusing on what's happening here in Austin and how our local elected leaders we're going to have Austin City Council member, I'm letting her in right now, Vanessa Fuentes, is going to be joining us to talk about what that decision means for Austin residents and what council is doing about it. Hi, Councilmember Fuentes. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So as people are trickling on, obviously everyone has heard the news at this point about the Supreme Court's decision, but I wanted to have you on today to talk some about what that means for Austin residents here locally and some of the action City Council has taken and is looking to take again in the future. And if people have questions, they can enter those there in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. I'm wondering maybe if you can just start out just giving us like your initial thoughts or response to this, and then we'll get into some of the local actions.
Yes, well, thank you, Amy and Austin Common, for having this conversation. I think like many today hearing, we knew that there was a leak and that this decision was imminent, but still it doesn't take away from the fact that we have effectively been stripped of a constitutional right to abortions. So it was devastating and heartbreaking, and especially for me as someone who represents a predominant community of color, because I know that these restrictions are going to have a disproportionate impact. They're going to affect our more marginalized communities, our communities of color, in an even greater way. So it just harms our communities even more. It was certainly, devastating to me personally. And it was devastating for the community that I represent, and it's devastating for women and individuals throughout the country. And so, my initial takeaway was just at a loss, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And, just to give people then a little bit of information about what this means for Texans and Austin residents. Obviously, some of this information is still coming in, but can you give people an overview? Here in Texas, we do have laws already on the books that basically make abortion illegal. So I know that's supposed to start in 30 days, but I actually just saw an article in the Tribune that's saying that many abortion providers in Texas have decided to stop today out of fear of other legal challenges.
That's right. The ramifications of this ruling has far and wide-reaching effects. And we know in Texas, for the last few decades, we've had lawmakers and really far-right extremists who've been trying to chip away at reproductive freedoms for years. And so what this does, and there has been legislation passed here in this last legislative cycle that triggers certain policies in effect with this ruling. And so what this does is it effectively bans abortions at conception, and it institutes criminal and civil penalties for individuals who help provide abortions to individuals seeking abortion. So for physicians who help out, anyone that is helping support an individual seeking an abortion can now be criminalized and will be criminalized and could potentially serve up to 99 years in prison. And there is $100,000 civil penalty associated with it too. So it is effectively the SCOTUS ruling effectively criminalizes abortion here in Texas and in many states throughout the country. So it is devastating. Now, there are policies that we have put in place here locally to have added protections for Austinites. One of the bills that I brought forward was updating our non-discrimination ordinance for the city, which would add additional protections for individuals in housing and in employment based on their reproductive health decisions. So no one can be discriminated against in housing or at work based on what they decide to do for their reproductive health care. My colleague, Councilmember Vela, and I are also bringing forward another policy called the GRACE Act. And what this does is it ensures that no city funding is used to investigate or report abortions. And it also ensures that our police department treats these alleged crimes of abortion as the lowest level priority. So it deprioritizes abortions and how we treat them here in Austin. And so those are a couple of things that we've done here locally. The council will have to have a special called meeting to officially vote on these items, and we're looking at the week of July 19th. So we'll be considering those measures. But I think the important thing too is that we are not alone in this. The city of Denton is slated to vote on their policy that also will help decriminalize abortion locally next week. They'll be the first city, and so that they're actually slated to vote on Tuesday.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about this. For people who aren't aware, Austin City Council is technically on like a meeting break. I know a lot of you all are still working during this time, but there are no meetings for the next month or so. So you're talking about perhaps calling City Council back a little bit early in order to vote on this. I want to talk a little bit more about what this means. So this is the GRACE Act, and it stands for Guarding the Right to Abortion Care for Everyone. And what does this mean? Because like this is, we do have this ruling. This is state law that abortion is illegal. So what role can the city play here? Like you're not talking about making abortion legal in Austin. You're just talking about deprioritizing it on the city level. Like, explain a little bit more how, like, what you all are talking about and what makes it different than just like going against whatever the state law is. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. So, here's the thing. Even though, Roe has been overturned, it doesn't mean that abortions are not going to happen. Abortions will, to be clear, abortions are still going to take place and they're going to be criminalized because of it. Now, what we're saying is that here locally, if someone has an abortion and someone else decides to report on them, because someone has to then file a complaint, either civilly, so like either through their workplace or their employment, or they report to the police that say, hey, this person had an abortion and I know the doctor who provided the abortion. So then what we're saying with our policy is that we want our police department to treat these allegations as the lowest level priority. Their time is better spent pursuing and reporting and investigating on violent crime. And having an abortion is not a violent crime. It is not a crime that should be prioritized by any means. And so we're really ensuring that this gets the lowest level amount of resources and attention from the city of Austin. And then also the other part of the GRACE Act is ensuring that no city funds are used to the cataloging, to the reporting of abortions. If someone files a complaint with the city, we really don't want to expend our city resources on this, because what we know is that individuals who are seeking abortions, this is their reproductive health. These are private medical decisions. These are choices where the government shouldn't have any business in.
And is this something that there's press, like that city councils are able to do? Is there other examples? I know we kind of walk this line a bit with marijuana as well, as far as like, is this a role city councils are legally allowed to play as far as telling their police departments where they should be spending their time and energy?
Yes, absolutely. This is still within our authority at the local level. And, these policies have been reviewed by our city legal team. And so we are good to go by adopting these policies. But we do know that our attorney general and other extreme elected officials may decide that they don't like what they're seeing and they don't like what we're doing. So there is always that threat and that risk that when the legislature convenes next session, that they could go in and, narrow out our scope. But nevertheless, I think the important takeaway here is that we're doing all that we can in the short term to provide protections by any means for Austinites.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, because I know a lot of these things are still unfolding, but when we talk about enforcement, I mean, how is this law, the Texas state law that's now legal because of the Supreme Court decision, like how will it be enforced? Who's in charge of enforcing it? Is it doctors? I mean, obviously we're hearing from, established clinics like Planned Parenthood and stuff. They're going to follow these rules. So I guess that's part of it. But how will it be enforced both for them, like for doctors, and then for kind of like you said, the illegal abortions, or the ones that are not even being done by really like an institution or a doctor even?
Yeah, so that is where the law is silent on abortions when it comes to self abortions, right? Because
Right.
like we said, we know that abortions are not going to stop happening. They're still going to happen, but it's just going to be much harder to do. But what we know that the laws that are triggered by the overturning of Roe are focused on the individuals who provide the abortions. So
Okay.
certainly the physicians are at risk, and we have already seen with clinic closures, with doctors who don't want to take that risk, that liability of performing abortions. And so as local policymakers, we're having to look at coordinating with other states that will effectively be haven states. So how we can get Texans to New Mexico, for example, where abortion is still legal. And so we're going to coordinate that care as much as we can. But as far as as far as the process, usually an individual would file a complaint either with the city's civil rights office or with the police department or with the district attorney. And fortunately, here in Travis County, our district attorney has gone on record. He released an additional statement today saying that he would not prosecute these crimes. So these alleged crimes, to be clear. And so what I think it's in Austin, we're fortunate in that we have many leaders who have stepped up from both the judicial side and on the policy side to add additional protections and to say that we're going to treat this as the lowest level priority.
Mm-hmm. And obviously that wouldn't impede upon the state lawmakers' ability or the state police to act in some way, but you're saying at the local level where you all have control.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the other things Austin has done in the past. I'm curious, if there's been any talk about, I know that previously Austin has directed funds not specifically, I don't think it's legal or had been legal to direct funds, city council, to like provide abortions, but was providing some amount of funding to organizations like Planned Parenthood or to like transportation for people that maybe were looking for abortion access. I'm wondering, in light of this decision, how that spending might change, or if you all have given any thought into that realm.
Yeah, definitely. Austin was one of the first cities, it was us in New York City, that established an abortion access fund. And these were critical funds that weren't directly paying for the abortion, but they were set up to help support individuals in their healthcare decisions. So through travel vouchers, through hotel stays, through childcare. So really looking at how else can we provide assistance for individuals seeking abortion. And that fund and what the city council has committed, of course, is at risk right now. And it does change how we're able to support moving forward. And what we've seen and what I have heard from certain lawmakers, again, extreme lawmakers, they have already come out and said publicly that they intend to bring forward legislation next legislative cycle that prohibits this type of use of public money. And so they're going to specifically target nonprofits. And which is really unfortunate. But again, everything is threatened right now. And of course, we're hearing from certain providers and nonprofits that they have, stopped helping and providing assistance because they are now could be sued for doing so, and they could be held criminally liable. I mean, that the sentence of it being a second degree felony, I believe, carries up to 99 years in prison. So what provider, what nonprofit would want to risk that? It's going to be very challenging. We are going into the dark ages with this.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how much you know about this either, but I know that it wasn't too long ago, the Planned Parenthood in East Austin, which had been renovated, reopened. I know a lot of city council members were at that reopening ceremony. I'm sure the people at Planned Parenthood knew at that time what could be coming, given the leaks, and we're preparing. But how does a decision like this impact Planned Parenthood's ability to do even some of the other things it does? Has there been any indication, because Planned Parenthood, also provides a lot of other healthcare services for Austinites, and I'm curious if you've had any conversations around that aspect.
Yeah, so the Texas legislature has already stripped Planned Parenthood from public funding in general. So they no longer receive funding from the state of Texas, which has had a huge impact on their operations. But very gratefully, through the assistance of individuals throughout the state and throughout the country through private donations, they have been able to maintain their operations and to still provide, as you mentioned, the other parts of healthcare, from mammograms to cancer screenings to, preventative health, birth control. They are still able to provide those services, but it is through the generosity of individual donations. And I'm sure they have foundations that support too. But because they've already been pretty much stripped of state funding, I don't foresee them having an impact to the other parts of the healthcare services that they provide. Now, of course, this does have a direct impact on them being able to provide abortion services, which is just so cruel. But the city of Austin does have a partnership with Planned Parenthood, where we their clinic is set up on city-owned land, and so we do assist in that way.
Okay. And then, I just want to read, this was a tweet and post from City of Austin government a little bit ago. It said ATX Council has consistently supported the rights of women to make choices over their own bodies, reproductive health, and family planning. The city is prepared to take steps necessary to implement further resolutions passed by council to protect these rights. I think that's probably not a surprise to many Austinites that this is how city council, the vast majority of city council feels. If there are Austinites listening to this that feel similarly to you and are fired up about this, what recommendations do you have for people to get involved or share their support or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, right now, this is where we need to stand up, speak out, and take it to the ballot box. It is important to vote for leaders that reflect your values, leaders who don't believe in taking away constitutional rights as the right to have an abortion. So I would encourage everyone that we really need to look at who we're voting for. There are several seats up this November here locally, of course, but statewide, the governor position for the state of Texas is open, or is contested, I should say. So that's an important election. Of course, it'll be important to maintain Congress as well. So just, be informed, vote, vote your values. And then I would also say to support any nonprofits right now that will need assistance, and particularly nonprofits that offer legal assistance. Jane Due Process is a great nonprofit that provides legal assistance, and that's the type of services we're going to have to really lean in on during this horrific time.
Yeah, and then just before we close, it's not directly this, but pretty related to this issue, just because I know you're passionate about healthcare in general and providing family services and services for women and healthcare services in town. What any highlights or things you might want to just mention, other things Austin City Council has worked on in the past year or so to expand healthcare access for Austinites or support families, support women in Austin, anything you kind of want to share about?
Yeah, so just a few weeks ago, or maybe a month now, City Council took a look at menstrual equity. And so we now offer free period products, tampons and pads in select city facilities. So our recreation centers, our libraries, really looking at how can we destigmatize periods. And because we know that period poverty is a real issue. And so that was one thing that we did in a spectrum of policies when we look at women's health. And the importance of reproductive health care. That is one area that we've really leaned in on, and we've actually created a movement because Fort Worth City Council just a few weeks ago also passed a menstrual equity item where they also freed the period and now have free period products in their city facilities. And I know I just having a conversation today with other local leaders. I know El Paso is also considering bringing forward a similar policy. So we know that movement is building. Also, we took a look at updating our legislative agenda to support policies that take out the tax on tampons. We know that menstruation is a hygiene issue, and so we shouldn't be taxed. Toilet paper isn't taxed, so why are we taxing tampons and pads? And so we also want to support that effort to repeal the tampon tax at the legislature, and that hopefully will be considered this next cycle.
Right, because City Council does have representatives there lobbying and working at the legislative level as well. People might not be as aware of that. That's something that the city works on as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. I'm sure you're having a very busy day, so I appreciate you taking the time to inform folks. Any closing thoughts that you want to share? And then, of course, we'll be sure to let people know when these votes might be coming up or links to anything that you mentioned when we post this video after.
Yeah, thank you for creating this space. I think right now, more than ever, we're really going to have to lean into our community and having these conversations and talking about the impact of such a devastating ruling and what it will have, the real life impact that has on our communities. Have those conversations. Please get out and organize. Today at 5 p.m., there's going to be a rally and a protest at the federal courthouse downtown. So if you're interested in coming out, and being part of the movement, please join us. And I would just say to everyone, I know today feels very bleak, and certainly this has been a tough week for a lot of folks, but know that you have leaders, especially here locally, especially here in Austin, who are fighting for you, who will not give up the fight, who will do all that we can to have protections, to protect reproductive freedom, and to ensure that we have a safe community for everyone. And so I just want to leave with that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. And again, that's Councilmember Vanessa Fuentes, District 2, Southeast Austin.
Thank you.